we're on Facebook. I wanted to make sure I catch this. Anybody that watches this in review on Facebook, you'll thank us later for Luke bringing this up. But yeah, what we were talking about is making sure that the REPSI is it gives the title company instructions on what they're going to do and how they're going to transfer title. And so technically, though, we actually have had title companies accept like lined paper, handwritten on the lined paper, we're going to buy this house for X amount of dollars, right? And so that instructs title on what to do. It's obviously extremely vague, but it works. And so that's probably why Jeff was like, hey, here's like a 2-page thing, because it's simple, right?
He said all they need to know is the address, the buyer, the seller, the purchase price, the closing date, and signatures.
Yeah.
And any other terms.
Exactly. And so even in like even like what you and I were talking about, you know, you just need to put there, you know, in fact, even the very words that I gave you that were like, you know, seller is going to carry back this much.
Yeah.
And we're going to put that in a shared appreciation note and deed, done. Mm-hmm. And title can go off of that. However, you know, I do want to share a couple of stories that, in fact, I just had this happen last Friday that, that we actually had recourse on because of how that seller acted. We were going to buy this house down in, I think it was down in Orem. And I was just the lender, but I was helping the guy through it. And he did use the whole like Utah REPSI that has all of those different, you know, nuances and whatever. I mean, and really, you know, you have to realize the history of where that REPSI came from. They, you know, Utah got some of the, I hate to call them the best of the best attorneys, but Utah got a bunch of good attorneys together and said, let's build what the Utah standard is. And so people brought experiences from all over the place and said, oh, we should put this in here because this has happened to me before. I've heard stories about this. And so we should put this in here because this has happened. Anyway, so all these different experiences create that contract from all those different attorneys. And anyway, so this deal on Friday, we go to close. Like I had wire instructions in my possession and we were getting ready to wire. And I get a call where they're like, hey, the seller canceled the contract. And I was like, what? You know, and in his provisions, it actually said that they do have the ability to cancel. The seller does have the ability to cancel. And here's the ramifications of that. He could either get earnest money back ×2. He could sue for damages. If there was additional damages, then, you know, he'd have to argue this, but he'd have to argue additional damages above and beyond earnest money ×2. Or he could technically sue for performance and say, no, like, we are going to go through with this sale. We signed the contract. We're going to sue for performance, because that's really what a contract is performance. It's a contract of performance. Here's how we will, I will do this. You will do that. I will own your property. You will get money for it. And so it's all performance, which is even why I say, when I gave you that advice, hey, just put in the addendum, seller to carry back, you know, shared appreciation and percentage. That's an addendum that says, hey, this is how we will perform, or what we will perform on. We will perform on a shared appreciation note and addendum at closing.
Yeah.
And so really a contract is, hey, here's what I'm going to do. Anyway, so this gentleman, they have that right to cancel. And so he got earnest money back ×2. And so I think he made like 10 grand or 5 grand. He got his
the
5
seller
grand.
did?
No, the buyer did. Because the seller and so like in your case, let's say that this gal gets cold feet down the road. Like there's not, you know, a 2-page contract doesn't have a lot of stuff in, I want to say like case, what would they call that? Case scenario gotchas. Let me turn this snooze off real fast. And so
Yes.
it just comes back to, like, how good of a relationship do you have with this person? Do you suspect that maybe they'll get cold feet last minute, and your chintzy little 2-page contract is gonna shoot you, you're gonna be shot in the foot because, oh shoot, like we didn't account for this? Or are you like, you know what, this person is solid, even if the deal falls apart, like, and we walk away, oh well, all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of the difference with contracts, which is why I typically lean towards, just use the Utah one, that I, gave you that advice. I'm not saying it's wrong to use it or not. But sometimes you run into those things. And, I in fact, I had one earlier this year that, what did I do? I think I put like $50,000 of earnest money down. And yeah, I'm trying to remember if this was the one, but all I remember is that I had so much leverage over this guy that signed a contract for me to buy his house, that like, even though he kind of wanted to back out last minute, he didn't really want to back out because he was going to have to give me all this money and get the property tied up in court. And, and so he was just like, you know what, you're right. We signed it. We agreed on it. Let's just do it. And he didn't give me any trouble.
Jeez.
And so anyway, and I don't say this to scare you. I just want to make sure, like, hey, here's the benefits and pros and cons. If you're not worried about this gal at all, dude, do your simple, write it on a piece of lined paper in handwriting, with a pen, and both of you guys sign it. But if there's anything in your mind that you're like, hey, like, I want to have a bulletproof contract that, no matter what happens, like, we're getting taken care of, then go with that, the state of Utah one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, does that help?
It does help.
And
definitely.
And does that add confidence in just saying, hey, let's just do this simple one? Or does that create a, like, what, maybe I should do, because whichever one, all these stories pushed you to is right. If you're like, you know what, let's just use the 2-page one.
I need to review Jeff's 2-pager and
Cool.
see if that has enough information in there.
Yeah.
But I have the Utah one together. I just have to explain more details to her.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. So all those pros and cons.
Yep.
Of simple versus bulletproof almost.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I hope that helps.
Totally.
And whichever way that pushed you to go one way or the other, like I always say, it's the right thing. Because the 2-pager, it might be the right thing. Mm-hmm. The lined sheet of paper, we bought one in, I think it was in 2020, that we bought one that was literally with a handwritten piece of lined paper, basically, that said names, addresses, purchase price, date. and that was it. I think we've closed 2 properties like that now. That was the contract. And if you gave me a minute, I could probably go find them. But that's really what it was. It's a lined piece of paper, ripped out of a notebook. It even had like the ripped sign, whatever.
Spiral bound.
Spiral bound. No, yeah, it had the ripped spiral bound paper. And we closed on it because that gives title enough information to perform. But yeah, great question.